New Year's Eve is right around the corner, and it can be a dangerous time to be on the road. Joining us live right now is Nevada Office of Traffic Safety Public Information Officer Andrew Bennett to talk more about this. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, so we know that we have a lot to talk about when it comes to New Year's Eve safety, but first we want to look back at 2020 and the year. What sort of trends did you see on the roads this year?
Unfortunately, this was a year that we didn't expect to have here in traffic safety. When we look at some of our trends, especially with the reduction in traffic that we experienced during the pandemic months, we should not be at a point in time where we're above where we were at last year. And I think just when we look at the last few weeks, the traffic fatalities can only be described as devastating. We had 7 fatalities on one day alone, which is truly unacceptable, and we all have to do our part. And unfortunately, we continue to talk about these same causes of crashes: impairment, speed, lack of seatbelt usage. And so our hope is, as we end this year, we hope to have a brief pause as we enter 2021 with a little bit more traffic safety here at the end of the year.
Okay, so what efforts are going to be put out there on your end and also NHP to make sure they tackle this problem, especially on a night like New Year's Eve?
And I think this New Year's Eve is going to look a little different than we all have experienced here in Las Vegas before, especially with a reduction in crowd expected on the Strip. House parties are going to be more of an issue for us than I think than it's been in the past. And so we still have our same level, if not more, enforcement planned for New Year's Eve with all of our law enforcement partners across the state of Nevada. Over 27 of them are working with us on New Year's Eve. But we're also, again, going to offer the discount codes for Lyft, because we want people to have a great time, party responsibly, party safely. But again, at the end of the day, please have a sober ride home for the end of your plans that evening.
Now, I know you mentioned that this year is going to look a little bit different compared to before the pandemic, obviously. Are you expecting to see as much activity on the roadway in general, or do you also think that that's going to decrease a little bit?
We expect to see, unfortunately, more DUIs this year than we have in the past. When we look at the pandemic months, when the bars and the hotels were shut down, we still saw an astronomical amount of DUIs on our roadways, and that's because people were going to other people's houses. And we think on New Year's Eve that will be an issue again, and so that's why we have valley-wide enforcement. We're not setting up any checkpoints, but we will have almost 100 officers out there across the valley specifically looking for DUIs. And again, this is now the time for education and the warning. But on New Year's Eve evening will be the time for enforcement, and it will be heavily enforced.
I know I've asked you this before, but I have to ask you again. How or what would you say to someone watching right now to make sure they understand how important it is to drive sober and how you can really make a difference on our roads, but also impact your life in a good way by obviously driving sober?
Sure, I'll start negative and then go with the positive. But when we talk about this year being the worst year ever, which was a campaign that we ran over the last few weeks, it can get worse. If you choose to get behind the wheel impaired, the best option for you is that you just simply get arrested for DUI. The worst that can happen is a fatality. You can kill someone, you could take someone's life. And we stress the importance, and we're not trying to be dramatic, but at the end of the day, these are the consequences that can happen. We're encouraging people to have a sober ride home and do the right thing. Take advantage of our discount codes that you can find on our social media at Zero Fatalities NV on Facebook and Instagram. And take that opportunity to be safe, get home, have a safe year, have a safe end to this year, and start 2021 the right way and safely.
Andrew Bennett, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate all the insight.
Thank you so much.